On a cold, rainy night in November 1971, a man in a business suit boarded a flight in Portland. He looked like any other passenger. But as the plane took to the skies, he lit a cigarette, leaned in, and whispered a terrifying truth. He had a bomb. What followed was a hijacking, unlike anything the world had ever seen. A man who would vanish into the dark, never to be found. This is the story of the skyjacker who defied the FBI and the mystery that refuses to die. This is D.B. Cooper. It was the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. Northwest Orient Flight 305 was a routine hop, but for the 36 passengers on board, it was about to become a nightmare. The man identified himself as Dan Cooper. He was quiet, unassuming, and seemingly expert in his demands. $200,000 in cash, 4 parachutes. In Seattle, the passengers were released. The money was delivered, but Cooper wasn't done. He ordered the crew back into the sky. With $200,000 and 4 parachutes on board, Northwest Orient Flight 305 ascended once more. But this was no ordinary flight plan. Cooper's demands were oddly specific. Stay below 10,000 feet. Keep the landing gear down. Fly no faster than 200 miles per hour. He was forcing the massive jet to fly at its very limit. Slow, low, and dangerously close to the rugged terrain of the Pacific Northwest. In the back, Cooper was alone with his prize. He ordered the remaining crew into the cockpit, closing the curtain on the world behind him. Then, at 8:09 p.m., a warning light flickered in the cockpit. The aft stairs had been lowered. The cabin was depressurizing. The crew realized with a jolt of terror what was happening. Cooper wasn't just hijacking a plane. He was preparing for a leap into the impossible. The FBI had one lead: a face. Composite sketches were blasted across every news station in America. A middle-aged man, calm, calculating. A ghost in a business suit. Then came Richard McCoy. Just 5 months later, he performed a nearly identical hijacking. A skydiver and Vietnam veteran, he fit the profile perfectly. Was he Cooper, or just a dangerous copycat? Cooper left behind almost nothing. A cheap black tie, a pearl tie tack, and 8 cigarette butts. For decades, these were the only physical links to a man who didn't want to be found. The FBI had recorded every serial number on the $200,000. They waited for a single bill to surface in a bank, a grocery store, anywhere. But the money had vanished as completely as the man who took it. Was he an experienced skydiver, a disgruntled airline employee, or a man with nothing left to lose? Thousands of leads were followed. Thousands of dead ends were reached. The FBI's case file grew to over 60 volumes. They called it Norjack. But as the years turned into decades, the trail went cold, until a shocking discovery changed everything. In February 1980, nearly a decade after Cooper vanished, the first real clue surfaced. An 8-year-old boy named Brian Ingram was digging a fire pit on a sandbar along the Columbia River. He found 3 bundles of cash, $5,800 in total. The serial numbers were a match. It was D.B. Cooper's ransom money, buried in the mud of Tena Bar. Just months after the money was found, Mount St. Helens erupted. The cataclysmic event buried the area in layers of ash and mud, potentially hiding or destroying any remaining clues of Cooper's landing site. But the search didn't end in the mud. In recent years, scientists have turned to the tie Cooper left behind. Using advanced technology, they've extracted rare titanium particles and potential DNA samples. These particles suggest Cooper may have worked in the aerospace industry or a specialized chemical plant. For the first time in 50 years, we might finally be closing in on a name. The river has kept its secrets for over half a century. But as science catches up to the legend, the world waits for the final piece of the puzzle. Is the man who vanished finally ready to be found? In 2024, a bombshell report rocked the investigation. A parachute, allegedly hidden for decades by the family of Richard McCoy, was discovered in an old shed. McCoy had always been a prime suspect. He was a skydiver who pulled off a near-identical hijacking just months later. Does this parachute finally prove he was Cooper all along? But science offers another path. A sealed air filter from the original flight, untouched since 1971, is now being analyzed. New techniques are separating mixed DNA samples to isolate Cooper's genetic profile. While the FBI officially suspended the investigation in 2016, a dedicated army of citizen sleuths and private investigators has never stopped hunting for the truth. They point to men like Robert Rackstraw, a brilliant but troubled Vietnam pilot. The circumstantial evidence is overwhelming, but the smoking gun remains elusive. Is he a dead man buried in the woods, a master criminal who got away, or simply a ghost story we tell ourselves? The man is gone, but the mystery of D.B. Cooper, that will live forever. In the late 1960s and early 70s, the skies were a different place. Between 1968 and 1972, a plane was hijacked nearly every week. Most were political, but Dan Cooper changed the game. In 1971, you could board a commercial jet with a briefcase full of anything, as long as you had a ticket and a business suit. Security was almost non-existent. Cooper's heist was the breaking point. The FBI and FAA realized the system was broken. Overnight, the era of innocent, unchecked travel began its slow, painful death. The industry's response was even etched into the aircraft themselves. Boeing added a small aerodynamic device to every 727, a lock that prevents the stairs from opening in flight. It's known simply as the Cooper vein. We live in the world Cooper created, a world of high-tech surveillance and strict protocols, but his shadow still lingers over every flight that crosses the Pacific Northwest. The skyjacker didn't just take the money, he took our sense of security. And while the man remains a ghost, the impact of Dan Cooper is etched into the very metal of every plane we fly. Who was the man in seat 18C? To find him, the FBI had to look beyond the sketch. They had to build a psychological profile of a ghost. He knew things a regular passenger shouldn't. He knew the 727's aft stairs could be lowered in flight. He knew about the flap settings and the engine's power limits at low altitude. Many believed he was ex-military, a paratrooper or a smoke jumper. His choice of parachutes and his ability to jump into a sub-zero storm pointed to a man who had done this before. Even his habits were clues. He smoked Raleigh cigarettes, a brand common in the Pacific Northwest. He drank bourbon and water. He was a man of specific, perhaps local tastes. His most defining trait was his pulse. He never panicked. Not when the police surrounded the plane, not when he stepped into the void. He was a man with total emotional discipline. Was it for the money? For the fame? Or was it a desperate act by a man who had already lost everything? 50 years later, the profile remains incomplete. The ghost still keeps his secrets. For over half a century, the man the world calls D.B. Cooper has defied gravity, the elements, and the law. He is the ghost in our machines, the shadow in our woods. Was he a hero, a villain, or just a man who found a hole in the world and decided to jump through it? Perhaps the answer matters less than the question itself. The wilderness of the Pacific Northwest is a place of deep silences and long shadows. It has kept Cooper's secret for 50 years, and it may keep it for 50 more. Every time a plane crosses these skies, the legend of the leap is reborn. D.B. Cooper is no longer a man. He is an idea, the ultimate symbol of the unknown. In an age where everything is tracked and everyone is known, he remains the one who got away, the man who vanished into the dark and into history. D.B. Cooper, the skyjacker who never landed. If you enjoy deep investigative stories like this, subscribe for more documentaries every week. Don't forget to like and share your theories in the comments. Thank you for watching.